So I've been learning Japanese for like almost 4 years now, and I've gone from knowing absolutely nothing to actually understanding some media and content in Japanese. I will share with you my process, what I've gone through, and the process that you will probably also go through. There are some things that I did really well. I don't want you to make the mistakes that I made, and I want you to do what I did well too. If at any point you don't understand anything, then feel free to ask me in the comments and I will definitely answer it. じゃあ始めましょうか。まずはおめでとうございます。If this is the first foreign language that you're learning, then congratulations, you have just found like the most interesting language there is, at least in my opinion. So first of all, what can you expect? Oh my god, this is perfect. Let's try this. There's the language aspect and there's the Japanese, and if you have some prior knowledge about language and you know the terminology, then it is a little bit easier for you. You don't need a linguistics diploma or whatever, but it definitely has its benefits when you already know some of these things. You know, the Japanese syntax is totally different from any European language. In English you put the subject, then the verb, subject, verb, object, and in Japanese it's the other way around. It is subject, then object, and then the verb at the end. Maybe you don't even know what an object is, you don't know what a subject and a verb is, and that's what I mean. I learned all these things in school. If you haven't learned these things, then whenever you are looking up something online because you don't understand it in Japanese, then you will find these words and you will think, wait, what does this even mean? Okay, now difficulties. Okay, so Japanese is really difficult, okay? It is listed as one of the hardest languages in the world. Especially for English speakers, it is listed as one of the hardest languages there is. And I'm assuming you are an English speaker if you're watching this video. So somewhere in your journey you will encounter difficulties, and that might be in the first 2 weeks when you're just learning about the alphabets. And yes, that is alphabet S with an S because there are multiple alphabets. Or maybe it's after a month or 2 months or a year when you are deciding to take the proficiency test for Japanese. Whenever this happens and you feel like something is getting really difficult, I can only tell you, don't give up. Please just keep studying. As a matter of fact, it is so easy to give up, and especially if you have been learning for a few months, because at this point your motivation will probably go down. In the first phase, you are really new in this language, you just heard about it, you're learning new things and it's really interesting, and also in the end, when you are actually able to understand a lot of things, it is easy to immerse yourself in the language. But in between those areas, so beginning and end, it is really hard to keep your motivation sometimes. You can lose track of what you are learning and don't know what to learn next, but this is totally common. You know, I realized this too. It is so easy to forget about the progress that you have already made, but you have to remember that if you keep studying, even if it's a little bit every day, those things matter. Like every day matters. There's a saying, Chiri mo tsumoreba yamato naru. And if you know what this means, let me know. I know what it means. I highly recommend that you track your progress. What helped for me is that there's so much to learn and that it is not possible to learn everything. And once you accept that, it gets way easier. So for that reason, I really recommend that you track your progress. You can write it down or you can speak. Like after a day when you've learned 1 or 2 things, try to speak a little bit about those things and record yourself. And I know this is a little embarrassing, especially when you look back at it later, but you know, it really helps. Not only because you are practicing your speaking, but also because you can look back at what you've already learned. And I did this too after like 3 years. I had studied for 3 years and I never ever recorded myself. It was a little embarrassing and scary, but I did it anyway, and I uploaded a video about it. So if you are interested in what that would look like or what it did look like for me, then I'll put a link in the description and I will also pop up the video in the upper right corner. So now let's talk about time. And first off, I just want to say that it's probably best if you don't have any expectations about time, because it is not really time as a way to measure your progress. It is really the effort and the effort that you put in during this time. For example, as I said, I've almost been learning for like 4 years now, but in those 4 years I haven't been putting in as much effort all the way through these years. Remember that I said about those months that your motivation will go down? Well, yeah, it got to me too, and I felt like giving up too. I had no motivation, and even though months had passed, I didn't make any progress at all. And I know when you're watching a motivational video or any video like this, you're probably thinking, but you know what, I'm so motivated, I can do this for at least a few months, I really got this. And I thought so too at the beginning, but you know, it's really something that you have to experience for yourself before you understand it. But it's not a bad thing, I think. I mean, I did learn a lot from it, and so that's a good thing actually. Being said, let's actually talk about the good things and the bad things and the mistakes that I made. So first of all, the start, okay? I think the start is the easiest and also the thing that I did well. As I said before, in the start you are new to this language, you are super interesting, everything is new, so you're highly motivated to keep learning. But there's also a chance that you are looking at this video and you have watched tons of other videos and you are still not learning. And I think this is actually something that I did really well. I found one video, well actually two, I got recommended a video series. I watched video 1 and from that day on I just kept learning from that video series. And every day I would do one lesson a day for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then I would write in my notebook, and the next day I would do it again and again and again. And so I kept going until the video series ended, and I believe at this point it's 90 videos. And of course the resource does matter, but it's easy to get stuck into analysis paralysis. When you think you found something, just go with it and keep doing that. It's really about consistency, and I was really consistent in the first few months. Because if you're not consistent, then it's so easy to skip a day or just not do it at all, because you keep looking at other resources or other videos. It's just like going to the gym or stretching, and that is that getting started is really the hard part, and afterwards you feel so glad that you did it. And if you don't know how long to study for, then instead of going for 1 hour or 20 minutes, just do one lesson. I mean, every resource has lessons, right? So just do one lesson, just do one video, just one, that's it. It's about that you keep studying and everything that you learn is worth it. So if you just study for one lesson, it's absolutely worth it. Now another thing is the content that you're learning with. It's not just the fact that I studied from one book, I mean one video series, but the fact that I kept immersing myself in the content. So what I mean is that Japanese language is literally everywhere. There's of course books, series, YouTube, anime, music, games, and so much more to learn from. And I'm actually into everything that I just mentioned. If at this point you don't know anything at all, you start from absolutely nothing, then I want you to remember this point, okay? In a few years, or maybe just 1 year, come back to this video and just see how much you have learned. It's absolutely amazing. When I started, I knew absolutely nothing, but now when I watch a series, for example, right now I'm watching a series called Alice in Borderland, and it's a Japanese series. I'm watching in Japanese with Japanese subtitles, and whenever I see a scene and I understand everything, it's weird to think that at one point I didn't know anything and now I just understood something in a whole different language. Any language, Polish for example. If you give me any sentence in Poland, if you give me any sentence in Polish right now, I would be like, I have absolutely no idea what that means. And then going from that to, oh yes, I fully understood that, that's amazing progress. And those other forms of content that I just mentioned, well, when Real releases a new song, I always check it out. When a new anime airs, I watch a few episodes. Nowadays, I'm not really watching anything, to be honest. When Flavor Japan uploads a new video, I watch it because I'm into breakdance. Keep engaging with the language and combine it with what you really like, and it'll just help you out immensely. So those were the things that I think I did really well. Let's now talk about the bad things, or I should say the things that I could improve on when I want to learn another language. First of all, let's start with speaking. Throughout the years, those 3-4 years, I have focused so much time on input, and I have changed my thought about it a little bit. Right now, I think speaking is important, but when I was starting out, I just really didn't think about it. I was just studying all the time and I wasn't speaking at all. And when I look back at it, I think I made a mistake, because the result of that is that right now my speaking sucks. It really does. Sometimes I'm watching something and I totally understand it, and then I think to myself, you know, I couldn't have said it myself because I haven't trained those speaking muscles, you know. The only reason for that is because I haven't practiced speaking. At the start I thought, you know what, I know all this, I know so many things, I can just start speaking. But that's not true, really. It isn't true. You really only learn speaking by actually speaking. And I have spoken before to some people, but that barely happened, like 10 times maximum. Actually, a real life example of that would be this very video. I mean, I am a native Dutch speaker since high school. Even before that, I knew English. Right now, I do struggle with speaking English because I don't speak that much. I'm partly making these videos too to improve my English, because the only reason I can do so is by speaking. You know what I also learned? It's the mindset, and having a right mindset when it comes to speaking is so important. For example, Polish. Again, Polish, I know. Right now, I don't know a single phrase in Polish except one, and that is nie mówię po polsku, and it means I don't speak Polish. The other day I met a Polish person, because you know there's a lot of Polish people in the Netherlands. Even though I'm a complete beginner, I told him nie mówię po polsku, and he was laughing. I said it with full confidence, and you know why? Because I know I'm a beginner, and in my mind I'm a beginner. But now imagine if I had been learning Polish for 3 or 4 years and I only knew that phrase, although that is not very likely, but you get the idea. In my mind I would have convinced myself that I am so bad at Polish and I only know this phrase even though I have studied for 3 or 4 years, and therefore practicing with that mindset would have been so much more difficulty. Therefore, practicing with that mindset would have been so more difficult. Mindset, it's so important. Now let's talk about structure. So how are you learning things? First of all, I want to say that for some people it is just easier if they have somebody else that tells them what to learn. And I am one of those people. I found a video series and I found a teacher on the series and he taught me all these things and he told me what I should learn. And why? Because they know the language better than I do. So they know certain things about the language. They know the best order for me to learn the language in, I believe. Once you are past this beginning part, it is so much harder to keep learning because you don't know what to learn next. I got to that point too, you know. I'm just going to learn these grammar or these words or these kanji without any context or any reference at all. I think this is kind of similar to trying to remember the phone number of someone you haven't even met. I mean, you haven't even met them yet, or you haven't even used the grammar or the kanji or the word yet. It's the same thing, right? So there's no reference point. I would try to remember something and then I would never use it again, so I would forget it anyway. The next time I would see it, I would look it up and I would think, hey, I've heard of this before, I've looked it up before. And it is then that you have a reference point or some context. That is when you really start remembering the thing. So my lesson from this is don't just learn random stuff. Try to immerse yourself a bit more as you get better in the language, and then as you encounter something, then look it up. And then the next time that you encounter it, you will remember that time that you didn't know what it was, and now you have some context. That is just how your brain works, so you have to take advantage of that because it is so powerful. But you know, even if you don't understand something, then it's totally fine. Just move on. Don't try too hard to understand. And that brings me to the last part, trying too hard to understand and then spending way too much time on it. I know it sounds counterintuitive because you are trying to learn a new language and therefore you are trying to understand it, right? But sometimes when I try to speak or chat with other people, I spend way too much time thinking about, is this correct? Should I put it this way or should I put it another way? Will they understand me? I know this is a personality trait, but it is also something that a lot of language learners encounter, I think. I can give you countless examples of real-life conversations that I had with people that didn't even speak Dutch that well. That was never the problem. The problem is what they were looking for. They were asking me something or they wanted to know something and they were just trying to communicate. I was totally understanding what they meant, so there's really no problem. Honestly, the only time you should be worrying about being 100% accurate is probably on a test. However, my opinions on tests are quite different, but that's a topic for another video. With that being said, thank you so much, and again, if you have any questions about anything, just let me know, please. I would love to help you out. So thank you for watching and bye bye.